All right, now that we're recording, um, pretty short and sweet notes from us today. We have a presentation from Aaron and Mark. We'll have a style guide feature about sports, and then just one thing to go over after that. So we'll start it off with Aaron and Mark. They're going to start with their presentation. Take it away.
All right. So Mark and I just thought that we would do a little um, kind of a look at how people who've been doing this for 20 plus years, how our brains work and how we quickly design a page, and just some of our tips for working efficiently and getting things done, quickly and cleanly. I think all of you know I've told every one of you that I always consider myself a workhorse designer. Not a lot of um, creative design from me. You know, not that it's completely out of my wheelhouse, but a lot of times it's just very simple, clean designs, and I'm just looking to make something that's really readable for the readers. So I just thought maybe it would be helpful. I always like watching somebody else design because I always feel like I pick something up. And Mark and I just kind of discussed like some of the things that we do to work quickly. And so I thought that I would just show you guys a little bit of um, like if I was just grabbing a front page, didn't have a lot of time to look it over and plan it out, how I would just quickly move through and what my thought process is. So, hoping that might be helpful for some of you guys. And then Mark's going to jump in with some of his tips for dealing with editors and things that he um, finds helpful for designing as well. So I will present here. All right. Are you guys able to see my Param focus page? Okay, I'm getting nods. Good. All right. So, like I said, just a Param page which I haven't worked on for a while, um, and I grabbed yesterday's budget and really didn't do an awful lot of looking over it. Just imagining that I was grabbing this and didn't have a lot of time to look it over before starting on it. Um, so I just go through and open and download all of my art right away. Make sure that everything will open, because then if I've got a problem, I can get the editors to jump on that immediately, and I'm not just kind of standing still. Um, and the reason I picked Purim too is, sometimes we get really good instructions from editors, and sometimes it's just the list of stories. And so I was hoping that it might be helpful for you guys, like why I would place things the way I do on a page. And I think it translates into the inside pages as well. Just looking at the shapes of art that I've got, whether that art is mugshots or full photos. Um, if it has art at all, if it doesn't, like generally that's going to be a rail story for me if there's no art that goes with it. Um, because Purim has this 3 column um, nook at the bottom. You can see with their little indexy, not really an index, but little teasers down here, and the marketing ad. It leaves kind of a goofy little 3-column hole, so it's hard to really do like a 1-column rail, like I often would consider doing on most papers. But like I say, I'm just going through really quickly, opening all of these. I'm going to throw them all through Claro quickly. And a few of these photos are marked like inside. So, okay, so those will be jump photos. I saw that on the lead story that there was a lead photo. So I know that I've got that at least. You know, sometimes you get those bunches of photos from an editor, and there's um, no discussion of which one's the lead photo, how many they want. You've got no idea at all. So I'm going to throw all of those photos in Claro. And I did see that one of them was a PNG file, so I'm going to fix that quickly. So while I wait for those photos to kind of start popping in, I'm already grabbing my cut line boxes. I'll be starting to download um, the stories as well. So as I was scanning through those quickly, let me bring that back up. I saw that, you know, I've got good art for the CP and the teaser. This science fair one is fine. The children's book one, we've got a book cover that was marked for cover. And then we've got that little map that we saw briefly. So in my mind, because I can't really do a nice rail, a 1-column rail, I think what I'm going to do is go through and use a 2-column along the left-hand side, and then tuck the bottom or that lowest story with the map into this little nook area at the bottom. I can also get my teasers done immediately. If I had time, you know, that monarch butterfly photo would probably look really nice cut out, and, you know, even perhaps tucked over the masthead a little bit with a flag. If I was really pressed for time, it's probably just going to be the photo. And in fact, I'm just going to see if that one is ready yet. Let's see how big we can play that. If I can't play it all the way across, if it's going to cut that butterfly off, I'm just going to probably do a little fade on the side. Um, so I think sometimes it's just deciding how involved you want to get to. Um, you know, I'm not super fast with Photoshop and don't have great Photoshop skills. So I'm not going to take something on that I know is going to take me a while to get through if I'm pressed for time. You know, if it's a Tuesday, if it's a Friday, when we're really just cranking. Um, you kind of got to know what you can handle in the amount of time that you've got available to you. So this actually crops really pretty nicely here. Um, so we'll see how that looks. I'd probably go and look. I think Purim probably has a white flag available, so I would swap that out. Um, I don't think I need to go through every little nuance of this, but um, start pulling some of our other photos in and see what they look like here. This was the one that was marked for our jump page. I don't think these were marked, the kids' photos weren't marked as to which one should be lead or not. This, I believe, was marked as our lead photo for this package. And we've got our little map. Okay. And sometimes too, I think honestly, I will, if I've got a couple of stories that might fit, um, them, like either one could be a rail story because they don't have art. I'm going to look at the length of the headline and which one's going to fit better. I might also look at the topic too, seeing, you know, if they've given me no direction, I'm going to look at what I think is the more important story. Um, and sometimes if you have a few stories without art, maybe you're going to go back to the editors and say, hey, since we don't have a lot of art, how about making this story from this city council meeting a lead story stripped across the top? I know that you've got this other story listed first, so I'm assuming you want that as CP, but how would how would that work for you? Is that gonna would that work? Because I think that would work well for my design. I think that's something that Mark and I were talking about a lot, is that um, we a lot of times we'll kind of come up with solutions, a couple of ideas for the editors and say, here's what I'm thinking. Because if I just tell an editor, this isn't working, or I don't know what you want me to do with this, they may come up with an idea that is just not going to fit the page well. Um, you know, because they can't see what you've got started. So so give them ideas that you know are going to work for you, that you can handle, that will work. And sometimes, you know, they're going to come up with something completely different, or they're going to say, no, that's really not what I want. But at least you've tried, seeing, you know, what is, or given them some options that you think will work well. So all right, so I don't want to like belabor this all, and you know, we've all got good plenty of things to do with our time, but um I hope that's helpful. I think to that when we're, you know, like I talked about, when we're looking at our what we've got available to us, you know, we need to be looking at our time, our own skills, and what we can do with that time. And also, you know, for me, a lot of times, especially with a front page, and especially if it's a very newsy page, I'm I'm not going to add a lot of, and I'm not going to feel bad about not adding a lot of what I would consider fluff. I'm not going to worry about adding a lot of colors to headlines or backgrounds, things like that. You know, sometimes, I mean, I love creative design, but sometimes you do need to look at, you know, is this creativity or is it clutter? And sometimes I feel like we can get a little bit cluttered up on our pages, and there's definitely places for those, and they can be really fun pages, but especially on a front page, I always want to make it as readable for our customers as possible. So um but yeah, so um, with front pages, you know, I think we all know we can't always wait until that page is marked ready. So just jump on whatever you can of those. If it's linked, grab it. Um, and yeah, start looking at things as quickly as you can. And, you know, really, uh, I don't know, it shouldn't take an awful lot of time if you've got all of your elements available, that you can jump in and have your page pretty well knocked out, you know, and then you're going to go back and finesse it, you know, and fine tune it. But if you don't have a lot of time, you can just get that done pretty quickly. So I hope that was helpful.
Okay, well, I guess I'll kind of go into what I was going to talk about. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about, like Aaron said, just communicating with editors and just showing them what you're facing and your suggestions and how to ask for their help more effectively. And one thing we talked about was, you know, show them instead of just ask for this headline's too long. You know, we'll show them what you've got, what you're facing, and I'll just present this quick thing that I put together. This is one I did about showing that your headline is just too large or too small. There's too many words, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And just kind of giving them an idea of what they might be able to change. You know, taking the keywords out of a headline and then just turning it into two headlines with a drop head or a bold lead in. Another idea we talked about was just, if a headline that's got to go in a tight space is just, too many decks and just doesn't work. Think about putting a label head in there to just tighten it up. Those are things we all know, but it's just a good reminder that you can actually take some advanced steps to and then show the editor what you're thinking. And it's kind of the same with the layouts too. If you've got a page where you just think, this lead art just isn't that great, but this secondary art is pretty nice. Maybe suggest, like I was thinking, if this story was the centerpiece and this story was the rail and it had pretty nice art, maybe suggest doing it as a soft lead story across the top and, putting the centerpiece down a little lower. But you could also show them that this gives you 3 stories above the fold instead of just the 2 previously. So just showing them what you're dealing with there is one way of communicating with an editor. A couple other things we talked about, I guess, is if you're working with a story and it's just too long and you're going to ask for an editor to trim, hold off on kerning the story, let them trim it first. And then if it's still too long, you've got some wiggle room to shorten it up some more.
Because we all know that inevitably you're going to need to smush it more, even after they trim it for you.
I need 5 inches cut and they cut a ½ an inch. What's going on?
I need 500 words trimmed. Well, I can trim 300. Can you see if that works?
Right.
Well, okay.
I think flexibility and when you're dealing with a page too, know in your head that, like, especially like Aaron was talking, if you're working piece by piece and you don't have all the elements yet, well, you want to at least get something on the page so you're not just twiddling your thumbs or just getting distracted by other things, is have some flexibility in your mind about, like, okay, if I run this art fairly large, I could always shrink it down a little to give myself, another option. So we're just thinking that way, always know you've got the other art elements that could, go to the jump page or do something like that. Just spreading out if you've got multiple pages and a cover, just suggest to the editor that maybe instead of fitting all the art elements that they have, because it seems crowded, ask them to, use some of it on the jump, maybe do a refer to photo package that came with the item, something like that. One thing we talked about is if you've got briefs and jumps, even though the editor hasn't set it on the budget, just think to run those lower on the page so you're building from the top with fresh content. That was about it. That was some of our tips for just communicating with editors. Any questions?
I thought that it was Mark's point about not boxing yourself in is especially important on inside pages for me, because a lot of times I'll be like, ooh, this fits perfectly in this spot and this fits perfectly in this spot, and then I get into the middle of the page and I'm 6 inches too long, 6 inches too long, like just all now I'm it's totally stuck and I have to rearrange things. So I think sometimes thinking about those types of things too, or actually bringing everything onto the page, just kind of plopping it there and seeing where things are fitting, sometimes helps too. And one thing that I do too, when I especially did this a lot when I used to do the Park Rapids paper, was put all of my stories on jump pages, because you know, some of our editors have pages that are only jumps for the most part. And then some of them like to have, you know, some fresh stories at the top and then jumps below. I always found it helpful for me to lay in all of my fresh stories at the tops of those jump pages and
Yeah.
then work on my cover so that I could really see how much space I was working with kind of early, because I hated to get, you know, my cover all done and trying to put all the jumps on and then realize that this, you know, city council story that was also scheduled for, you know, page 3 doesn't fit. So I think that that's something that's often pretty helpful for me, but it's also I'm looking at where those stories are coming from. Is it just like an FNS story, or is it actually one that was written by somebody at that newspaper? So, like going back to Park Rapids, if it's a story that was written by Grand Forks that they want at the top of page 5, but I need way more jump space. I'm going to tell them, you know, can we maybe hold this FNS story, or can you cut it way down? Because I know that that editor is generally going to be way more um, flexible with a story that didn't come from their own reporter than something that's local to them. So.
For sure. I think those are really awesome points that you went over, and it's just the reality of the things we have to deal with day in and day out. I mean, I feel like the skeletons are helping a lot, but there are still so many, you know, that don't have them. And so that's just the reality of the things that you guys make decisions on the fly. I thought that was a really awesome point that you made about placing the stories on your jump pages, because I just think that's huge, you know, doing as much pre-work as possible. And even if something's not linked, if it says it has a photo and it's going to be 500, you know, 600 words, you know, maybe putting something on the story to hold that space using the copy hold place. Words are hard. You know, so you can just visually see the actual space you have to work with. I just thought that is some really helpful tips. Does anyone else have any questions for Mark and Aaron? See anything in the chat? All right, chicken. I'm going to move on to the feature. And if you guys do have questions, obviously, please reach out to them after the fact. You can type your messages here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. The feature we're going to do today is, I called it sports, but it's really kind of some notes and tips about sports, some general information about that. Sometimes when I share my screen, it doesn't always know what screen I actually want to share. Let's guess and do this one. Oh, Ashlyn had a question. I was wondering how you drop the photos on the page, Aaron. Did they go through Claro first? I like the idea of designing with photos first. While I work on actually presenting the correct screen, Aaron, do you want to address Ashlyn's question?
Yeah. Yes, I did run them all through Claro. So I downloaded them all. I just have a folder that I download that's not my downloads folder for some reason. I just download everything to that folder all the time. And and then drug all of them at once into Claro, into the Perone folder. It was on my other screen, so you couldn't see it. But yeah, I did run them through Claro first. And that's why I was working on like bringing in my cut line boxes and starting to flow in stories while I was kind of waiting for those photos to process a little bit. So.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, everyone should be able to see my pace track queue. It's not giving me a preview, so I actually don't know. Is that the correct screen? Okay. So, plain and simple, I think the night siders are obviously way more familiar with this than day siders. So I just wanted to go over how you access the scoreboard. So in your in page track, you go to your shared pages, and this is the scoreboard that is being worked on for today. The scoreboard is dated for that day. So for example, you know, we're working on dailies for April 9th, but the scoreboard is going to be dated April 8th because that's the day that you'll be able to go back and reference the scoreboard, getting information from that date. So if you need the scoreboard from a previous date, say for example, we are working on sports for Rochester on Monday, or excuse me, on Monday for the Tuesday deadlines, or if we're working on any of the papers that need the scoreboard early, such as Duluth, Grand Forks, or maybe even something for the forum that prints on Wednesday. Since we don't have a scoreboard available, you know, around the 5 o'clock hour, usually there's not much available to us. Right there in the morning, you guys can grab the scoreboard from the previous day. And to do that, you'll still go to your shared pages here, and you go over here to the on the left to the date. So if today was Monday the 5th and we're working on papers for the 6th, like if we're working on Rochester sports, I would go to the scoreboard for the 4th. If they needed something from Sunday, you hit filter, and then you would download final, and that's going to download the finalized copy of the scoreboard with all the information on it. And obviously when you open that up, everything that's available for the scoreboard from that day is going to appear in the working file. And just because it just came to mind, and it seems to happen not quite as frequently recently, but it happens once in a while. If you find it's really bogging down when you open the scoreboard in InDesign, like it's taking forever, it's spinning, I'll just let a hub manager know. Usually there's a way that they can just reset that and upload a clean page, and that usually fixes that problem. I believe I'm just skimming my notes here. Yes, that's all I needed that for. On your sports pages, the corporate scoreboard and the local scoreboards are mixed when you're laying out sports. So when you're doing that, just making sure that when you're grabbing content from your scoreboard, from the corporate scoreboard here, that you're grabbing the entire item, and then making sure that you're having a standing head or a label head. It depends on the sport. Say, for example, this is baseball. If there is local baseball that would obviously run before the professionals. And sometimes they would divide that using a completely different standing head. But in this case, say if you're short on space, you know, you would have your local, and it would be labeled, oh gosh, some local headline, but local baseball, or maybe it's college baseball. I don't know. I'm not a sports person. But ultimately, using that standing head of baseball and then having the centered bold copy with the local information, and then having the national run after that. Another example would be that sometimes they completely have it separate. I've noticed that Duluth does this quite a bit. They'll have a page completely for maybe baseball, or they'll have a page completely for hockey, and then their local stuff they're running actually within the sports story. So it just kind of depends on what notes are on the budget. Sports agate obviously is primarily the Arial 6-point over 6.5 leading. That's kind of your go-to for sizes, and that is in our paragraph style. So I wanted to open that up and show you that when you scroll down, you'll see the sports agate 1, and there's all these short keys for it. But ultimately, I think what comes down to having to use these is if you're running, you know, 5 tabs or 4 tabs or 3 tabs, depending on, I'm not going to get too deep into that. Just wanted to highlight that there are other styles that are quick to fix the tab, if you're working on a sports page. Make sure that all sports calendars are formatted using the Metro Calendars script. When it comes to, I think anything, if briefs are being styled as briefs, calendars are being styled as calendars, sports calendars is Metro Calendar. I think that's just something across the board within our styles that we just need to pay attention of, that it may not always be noted on the budget that they use the brief script, or make sure you use the calendar script. They're labeling it a calendar. That's our job, just to know to use the calendar script. But I think the only thing that sets it apart is a sports calendar. Make sure you're using Metro Calendar, not calendar script. A calendar is more like for a community calendar, whereas the Metro Calendar is set up a little bit differently if there were tabs within the sports calendar. Related to that, the sports TV or radio type of agate, that there is an actual sports TV script. Make sure you're using that. That's stylized just a little bit differently. It actually uses our Josephine Slab font. A good place to see that is within Jamestown Sports. I know they run that pretty regularly. All sports stories are formatted using the Sports Gamer script. And then the nice thing about the sports scripts is they're all the way down at the bottom. So they're, sports brief, sports features, sports gamer. And the reason we have these, of course, is because there's usually agate that's appearing at the end of a story. And if that's formatted correctly, when you run your sports gamer or sports feature on your centerpieces, that agate will come in formatted correctly. The last thing about the sports pages was just that, that was it. The sports gamer and sports features. I think that's all I had on there. And then of course I didn't highlight it, but there is the 2 scoreboard scripts. If you're running just generalized agate for any paper, there is one different for Rochester because of the font that they use for bold. So if you found, if you're working on Rochester and you ran the scoreboard clean Google by accident, redrag it in and use the scoreboard Rochester. That was modified by Travis Bittner. So that's going to work and apply the correct bold font for us. Stop presenting. Otherwise, the only other announcement that I have is just a reminder that all Duluth publications are being printed in Brainerd now. We updated our contact information on our deadline spreadsheet. We now have an email contact for them, which is huge. So just a reminder that they're going to look a little bit different. If you recall, Brainerd has the go, no-go dots on the top of the page and the bottom of the page. This helps the press align with their bar, the colored bar. Also, Duluth, I don't believe that they had bars on every single one of their pages, but that'll obviously change with more how the Brainerd press staff works. So that's going to be modified a little bit. And then as most of you have kind of found out on the fly this week, the folios have changed slightly. An email did go out to the copy desk because they were sending back so many pages. Is this folio right? Are you sure? Because last week it was like this and this week it's not. So Travis did email them so they know to expect that now going forward. So there shouldn't be any confusion. But obviously just keep doing like I've seen you guys have been doing. Just reach out to the Layout Center if you're not sure about something. They're pretty quick to respond for any questions on template stuff because that team did handle the changes with the templates for all of those publications. And that's all of Duluth, Cloquet, and Superior. And then of course any special section page that they do. Does anyone have any questions?
I have something about Duluth actually.
Right.
So their size has changed. So the skeletons aren't perfect anymore. So if you guys can just adjust those until I can circle back and fix all of those. The problem is there's the potential for another size change. So we don't want to change 50 skeletons and then change them back again. So it might be a little bit, but if you can just adjust those so that they fit, everything will be fine. All the counts are the same and everything. So just a heads up, if you pull one in, it doesn't fit perfectly, just adjust it, please.
Sweet. Thanks, Michael. That obviously goes along with anything in the library for Cloquet, Superior, or Duluth. Obviously, we won't have the issue with the column SIGs anymore. But if you guys would just modify those as we go along until we hear back, like Michael said, about the template changes. But I won't keep you any longer. If you guys have any questions, obviously, please don't be afraid to reach out. Aaron, you unmuted. I see it. What do you got?
Oh, I was just going to say that that email that I sent out yesterday about the settings and stuff for mics and cameras and stuff, we did get Mark's all completely working. So both audio and video. So I think that should work for everybody. Everybody that's logging into their computers. I just don't know exactly if it works the same for those of you who are working off the remote desktop on the server, but I would say give it a try. And if, I couldn't include little like screen captures because I was outside of our system, because you have to do it before you actually log into your remote desktop. So if anybody has any questions when they're trying to do that, or if you're doing a presentation soon and need a little help with that, I'd be happy to walk you through it.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, and thank you for sending that out. I think anyone who's not sure can totally give that a try. It'd be worth a try for sure if anyone's having issues. That was really good instructions. Michael, I see you unmuted. What do you got?
Oh, nothing. I just didn't remute myself. That's all. I'm all good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll let you guys go. Have a good rest of your day. Bye, everybody.